Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, where we'll spend the next 30 minutes exploring 5 key focus areas for e-commerce in 2016. Before we get started, I'd like to call attention to the Questions tab on your screen. Please feel free to use this anytime during the presentation, and we will address these at the end of the presentation. I'd now like to introduce today's presenter. For those of you who are not familiar, Telium is a leader in real-time customer data solutions and enterprise tag management. Adam Corey is Vice President of Marketing at Telium and leads the company's marketing and partnership efforts focused on driving awareness and cultivating alliances with best-of-breed customer data solutions. Adam has over 13 years of experience in digital analytics, marketing, and business development. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Adam, to dive in.
Great. Thank you so much, Becky. Really great to have everyone on the call with us today. We appreciate you taking time to join us for this 30-minute presentation as we go through a few key focus areas that, as we've done a recent survey with our customer base, as well as trends that we've seen within the users that are in our ecosystem, as well as the industry as a whole, we really wanted to spend 30 minutes today to talk about some of those key areas of focus that marketers and retailers just like yourself are really focusing on as they start off the new year. So we'll go into each one of these individual areas as we step through. But I thought it would be helpful to start off by talking a bit about how customer expectations are really growing. So I always like to say, let's take off our marketer hat here for a moment and let's slap on our consumer hat. And all of this makes a lot of sense for us. At least half of us would purchase more from retailers when they suggest products or suggest an experience based on what I've done in the past or what I've purchased in the past. About half of us really want the retailer, for those of us that actually have a digital as well as a physical presence out there, we want both to really be a part of the experience and the journey. Retailers that see in-store transactions should take that into account when they're actually engaging with their customers via digital channels. And then last, over a third of us, and this is certainly me in that 38%, really get frustrated or don't have a great experience when products that I care about, experiences that I care about, or language that really resonates with me really isn't taken into account when you receive an email or receive a communication. If you're not listening to what is important to me, it really makes me feel like this isn't the right brand relationship that perhaps I should be continuing into. So let's start off, and I really wanted to focus on the idea of nurturing. So I'm going to be a little biased here in that I'm a B2B marketer. Traditionally, we focus on the concept of nurturing, and that's sometimes a newer concept for other types of marketers, retail and otherwise, but it's really becoming a trend that's being adopted more and more. So really, what is nurturing? You know, it would be great if we could just run an ad, a customer would click the ad, and they would buy something. And maybe for some of us that have the right price point and something that's a very transactional purchase, maybe we do have that in some cases. But the more expensive the purchase or the more consideration that's required in the buying cycle, the idea of nurturing the customer through that buying cycle is really important. We need to tell them more about our brand, educate them on our products, and really build trust so that way when it comes time to actually buy something from us, they understand and they're ready and they enjoy and trust and believe in our brand. But also, it gives us the ability as marketers to learn more about the customer. What are they clicking on? What content is resonating with them? Where are they in the decision-making process? So that we can then respond with the right language communication to really guide that buying process over time. So why is this important? So in addition to this just sounding like something that we should all be doing, it's really becoming harder and harder for us to reach our ideal customers out there online. It's certainly still an important part of the equation, but if we think about the increase in the number of users that maybe aren't clicking or don't even trust clicking on banners or are trying to avoid ads altogether, it's becoming a growing concern. Compare that as well with my spend. I'm seeing flat click-through rates, flat viewability rates in some cases according to ComScore and DoubleClick, but also fraud and click fraud and things like that out there that are really costing me money. So certainly I'm still going to embrace traditional advertising, both digital as well as other channels to reach new people. But it becomes really important when I do finally connect with somebody that I make sure that I continue the conversation. So I thought as I was putting together today's presentation, I thought I would share something, again, with my consumer hat on for a moment and share my experience so far with Casper. So not a customer, no relationship from a Telium perspective, but one of the things just from a consumer, because I'm actually in the market and like the brand so far from Casper of what I've seen so far. For those of you that don't know, they're a bit of a disruptor in the mattress space. And I really followed their journey along the way where it's introducing me. Obviously, I've set a little bit of a relationship with being interested in the product itself. So their first communication to me, their first series of communications has really been about their product itself, helping me understand how their product is different, how their buying process is different, which is great. Then they moved on to tell more of the story from their brand, which is how are these things made? Why is this important? Let us really convince you and share some great facts and some great details around the quality and the craftsmanship that's actually associated with this. So they're really telling a story at that point. And it's a multimedia story that exists on web, in video, and blending the two together. And then finally, really bringing in the trust element from other buyers like myself so that I can actually see and hear, hopefully unbiased reviews from other folks out there that can really tell me more and more about why I should actually continue the relationship. So knowing that a mattress is not something that you buy, off of, a quick relationship or on a whim, it's something that really might take a little bit of time to actually nurture someone through the process. And this is really what we're seeing here. But it's also about creating experiences. So another one that I do maybe indulge in sometimes a little too much, pizza. When you think about years ago, the way you would advertise pizza, it might be exclusively flyers and coupons. But is that enough today to really make sure that I stand alone as a brand as I'm actually trying to get someone to come back time and time again? So loving what Domino's has done throughout their mobile and online experience where I can build visually the pie that I want, I can actually see it and track it along the way. So now they've turned something that is still coupons, I can still apply coupons and look for deals and purchase in a lot of the same way, but it's really become a more immersive experience, much more so than back in the 80s or 90s when you go rent a movie and call the pizza delivery place to have them deliver your pepperoni pizza. Now I'm actually experiencing a lot more of the creation process, I'm involved, and therefore more connected with the brand than I would be if I just dialed a number. But to do any of this, really getting the context and creating those experiences, it's not possible if I don't have not just a unified customer view, which I think we all know that we need to do, but it's something that needs to be actionable. And when I say actionable, I really like to think about the difference between, hey, I could have a unified view of my customer that sits in a back office data warehouse somewhere else out there that maybe one team has access to it. But if I'm an email marketer or I'm on social or I'm engaging people as I'm building my mobile experience or the web experience, I need to use that data. I need to be able to take action on that data right now, as opposed to waiting to have a meeting with another team that hopefully can share some insights with me. I need this connected to what I'm doing today. So that really brings us to our second point, which is around connecting the dots. We started off as we were listening to some of the survey results that we'll get into in a moment, as well as some of the conversations we've been having with retailers over the last year. And this started out as just talking about in-store to online or offline to online, or maybe a couple different channels. But as we started exploring this more and more, we really found that it's not about just online and offline or web to mobile. The diversity of the channels in which our customers are communicating with us is continuing to grow. So this is really all about connecting the dots throughout that experience. So let's start with one of the words that we all hear related to this, which is the idea of omnichannel. And omnichannel or multi-channel or all these different phrases that are thrown out there, I thought it would make sense to talk for just a moment on what the heck we mean with by this term. So let's just put out the window for a second all the technical aspects that are embedded in this phrase of omnichannel marketing. And omnichannel marketing is really about creating a seamless customer experience. It doesn't matter what channels, what screens, what devices, physical realm or the digital realm or a combination of the two, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that we're not requiring our customers to reintroduce themselves and restart their experience every time they go from one place to another. Certainly they need to introduce themselves on a new channel, but they don't have to do that every time. And more importantly, they don't have to tell us what they like, what they don't like, what they're searching for, where they are in the buying process. That really becomes a hurdle and a reason why someone might not engage in multiple channels. So as I was thinking about this today, one of the things that popped into my mind was a presentation I did recently with one of our financial services customers. So a little bit different, although similar in a lot of ways to what we face as marketers in general or retailers more specifically. And in their case, they were finding that social was, as they started, a channel for them to engage, tell a story, and really market. And they immediately found that it was becoming more and more of a support channel. That was the place where people were going to ask questions, to try to navigate maybe their website or do other things. And so what was more of a marketing extension really became, to them, almost like a concierge, where now social had to be able to be the front door that allowed people to engage from a sales cycle, get questions, have service, maybe product questions, you name it. But they really had to participate and guide people along in the experience. But more importantly, they had to know more about the consumer or the social user when they came over so that they could respond accordingly. If they didn't have the same understanding, or social was a divorced, separate, siloed aspect of the marketing organization or the customer experience organization as a whole, this wouldn't be possible. And of course, this really takes time and money. And one of the things that we found with our own survey that we did just last month is the real reason, or the real challenge that our customers are facing, or retailers, I'm sorry, as a whole are facing, is that most of them say it requires time and resources on their side to actually make this come to be. The technology itself, maybe they're starting to think through how that would come together, but really it takes sitting down inside of your organization and partnering with your vendors to actually come up with ways to connect the dots for your customer experiences across the board. So as we think about connecting the dots, so let's take the offline to online example for a moment. The first thing that I need to do to be able to connect those dots is I need to understand who somebody is on multiple channels. And that does require them to actually tell me who they are, hopefully just once on those channels, so that I can connect the dots. But as a consumer, put back on my consumer hat for a moment, I'm not going to do that unless there's a reason for me to do that. I need to be able to, as a brand or a retailer, provide value back to the consumer and really make the experience better when I connect the dots across the board. So here we'll take one of our customer examples, and I love this example. It's from American Eagle Outfitters. And for those of you who have ever, I don't know, probably all of you, have looked at clothing online and bought clothing online, if you think to maybe the first time that you're engaging with a brand online that sells clothes, one of the things that you may struggle with, or that could even prevent you from buying, might be that you don't know exactly how it's going to fit. And some retailers do a great job at telling more about the fit, how that's going to compare to other things. But that might be a reason is, we don't necessarily know how something's going to look until it's on us. So one of the things that American Eagle Outfitters has really pioneered is leveraging data about their customers, what they're interested in buying and what they're adding to carts and things like that, but also connecting the experience between web, mobile, and in-store so that I can easily reserve and try in the physical stores, but I can start the experience from digital. So while I'm in a meeting, I can browse through, and if I'm not ready to buy right then online, I can simply say, hey, you know what, I wouldn't mind on the way home stopping off at my closest American Eagle Outfitters and have waiting for me all of these things from my cart. So now that's obviously provided value to me as a customer, so I can connect the dots between my digital and my physical self. So I'm going to draw those connections. But now it's going to allow that retailer a wealth of information on both sides of the equation. Now I can connect when someone's in store what they purchased to what they were browsing online, and vice versa. I can leverage the things that perhaps they've been browsing online and potentially upsell them in store when they actually interact with one of my associates. But it all comes down to there's got to be a reason and a value provided to the customer for them to be able to connect the dots for you. Now, when we think about all of the things that we could be doing and all of the new channels and new technologies out there, it really comes down to making potentially new investments with marketing technology solutions, but making the right investments or making smart decisions when it comes time to implementing those marketing technologies that are out there. So also from our survey, we found that over half just this year in 2016 of retailers are planning new technologies and new platforms as a whole to bring into their own ecosystem. But it's important for us to think for a moment, do each one of these vendors that I'm considering or that I already have in my overall vendor ecosystem, do they all share the same strategy and the same universal approach to building that great customer experience that we've been talking about so far today? And this really becomes difficult when you think of the number of technologies that you might have in your stack. So of a study that we did with eConsultancy last year, most of us out there have 21 or more vendors that make up that ecosystem. In fact, almost a third of us have more than 30. And if you're not sure, I actually encourage you to take a look at your own stack, and you can even use a browser plugin called Ghostery, which will show you all of the different technologies that are used on your homepage or throughout your web experience, because it's a lot. And they all need to be able to talk to one another and connect the dots between each other. But unfortunately, this hasn't happened, or for a lot of us, hasn't happened yet. And so from a survey, also from eConsultancy and another report that they did, they actually found that 92% of brands and retailers out there actually don't have a platform that's connecting all of their channels together. And so that's really where it becomes critical to think about not only how do individual vendors connect, but do you have a centralized customer data platform and strategy that's going to connect the dots with all of the vendors in a neutral way. One of the other things that we found really interesting from the data that we did in Q4 was around what's happening with data analytics with retailers. So here we're actually saying, we're asking retailers out there, have you changed or are you planning to change analytics solutions, and did you do so in 2015? And a third not just changed an analytics vendor, but actually added a net new analytics vendor in 2015. So perhaps moving from just doing web analytics to leveraging something that can provide better access to that data to give you insights into it, or maybe enhancing their existing analytics implementation with more data and hopefully enriching that data with more customer information across channels. That was 56% of people, of retailers that were actually saying they spent time in 2015 to enhance and add more data to their existing analytics implementations. But again, it comes down to people as well. And half of us were actually saying that we're looking to add, or we hired additional people or resources to be able to make sense of this data out there. And when we think about all the different ways in which we're interacting with data across the board and all the different vendors that we might be using, those 21 plus vendors that are the norm out there, each of them might be creating fragments or their own separate understanding of who somebody is. But if I take a different approach and actually approach more of a data supply chain concept where data is not siloed in one particular vendor or not siloed in one particular part of my organization, but everyone plays into one centralized strategy that understands who the customer is and works together in real time, this is a concept of a customer data platform that really becomes key. Everything has to be able to connect together. That means my people, my tools, my technologies, and my customer experience layers all have to talk to one another so that I, as a marketer or retailer, can be able to act on customer data in real time to create those wonderful experiences that we know are so essential to help convert the buyer over time. So I mentioned a little thing in the last one where it's not just about connecting tools and technologies and vendors, it's really about connecting teams. I think back to another customer that I had a conversation with in 2015 that we started working with, and one of the things that he was most surprised about when he started leveraging a customer data platform to connect his vendors, he said, we knew that we were using this to bring together our email to Facebook, to our website, to our mobile app, so that each one of those channels had the latest update about what's important to this customer so that I could make sure that I was sending them down the right track, present the right products, et cetera. But he said, what was really interesting there is that it's not about the technology on its own. because our technology is now speaking the same language, is using the same descriptors for the customer, the same segments and audiences, my teams are actually able to communicate in a new way, because what I call in the marketing organization a VIP customer is now the same designation that my BI team is using, my email team is using, my social team, as well as my in-store team. And that's really the goal of having a centralized platform for everything, is fostering communication and collaboration internally. So from the survey that we did in Q4, almost half of retailers out there are actually planning organizational processes, changes to their organization or changes to processes that they have in 2016 to really be more agile, work in real time, and to foster a more customer-centric approach throughout everything that they do. One of the things that I love also here is from Forrester, which is, again, a great beacon of direction for a lot of us. In a recent report, Forrester really explored the critical success factors in what they're really calling the age of the customer. And they look at shifts that leaders are making now. And I really want to call attention to two of those shifts that relate to this discussion around fostering this cross-channel collaboration. And one is around being aware of what the customer wants and needs, and obsessing about the values of personalization to the customer experience. It's really about creating an organization that is not just customer-centric, but really customer-obsessed. And really going a bit further, optimizing within the functional areas so that, again, regardless of how the customer is interacting or which team they're interacting or which channel, I'm delivering that consistent value across every aspect of the customer journey. And so they actually found that the leaders in our industry, from a retail perspective, are actually making these alignment changes organizationally and really being able to instill the core principles of customer centricity and customer obsession. Now, what 2016 or year ahead rundown would be complete without a look at mobile. And so I didn't want to put mobile in here on its own. I'm calling this mobile and everything else, because mobile, if you're just thinking about mobile as a standalone strategy or mobile being just your phone, really is not going to cut it in 2016. And I love this cartoon here because it one speaks to me as a person, because I feel like my entire life is now interconnected in a lot of ways. But I also just thought it's funny as we think about not just mobile, but connected devices and the Internet of Things. And here in this case, this guy's smoke alarm's going off, or it must be, because now he's getting targeted on Google for a fire extinguisher and temporary housing. I love this because it really is true, but mobile is really not just about mobile, it's about all the devices that consumers are interacting with, and the rate of change is really increasing rapidly. If we think about the decades it took for consumers to move from one model in which they interacted with the internet, let's say from a desktop computer experience, into 2007, when all of a sudden smartphones and the iPhone, just to take Apple's device evolution, from 2007 onwards, we're seeing more and more screen sizes that aren't just different devices that I have to design for, but are all used in really different ways. From the way the iPhone is my constant companion throughout my day, to the way my iPad might be more of my consumption and research device that was just a couple years later, to now I have an Apple Watch that's my reminder and in some ways my nagger throughout the day of things that I have to do. But now I'm also interacting with brands and retailers via smart TVs that have apps, and I can actually buy and experience the brand in those devices as well. We're only going to see this increase as we think about the explosion of Internet of Things, not just as a category, but as a way that our customers are starting to interact with us. So if we think about the experience as just a web to mobile or mobile to web experience, that's actually not relevant on its own anymore. Mobile is far more vast and diverse than just that. But if we think about how important this is, everyone's saying, especially from the retailers that we surveyed here, this is extremely important to them when they think about mobile. Again, that constant companion that a mobile phone can provide. This is extremely important, or pretty much everyone's saying that it's pretty darn important to be embracing. But mobile alone really isn't a strategy. If we think about what each one of these devices represent, they each represent a critical component or a really important touch point in the omnichannel customer experience as a whole. If we think about what a desktop browsing experience looks like compared to what a mobile experience might look like just on my phone, two very different aspects of the customer experience. My mobile phone might be much more immediate from how I'm interacting. Could be telling a story around I'm further down the buying cycle, I'm checking in on product attributes, or I'm looking for a store location, or I'm checking to see what the price is of something. Could be very different as it relates to what I might do on the web, where the web might be getting a larger understanding of what you as a retailer have to offer. But if I don't have the same understanding of that change in customer experience or where somebody is on the customer journey, I'm really not able to drive the best engagement, the best strategy when someone gets to that other channel. So as we think about some of the important drivers for change here, a couple metrics that I wanted to share with you as well. And I'm going to start at the bottom, which I found really interesting as we think about the immediacy in a lot of cases, but also the ever-present aspect of mobile devices. Really, mobile searches, queries that happening out there have finally exceeded desktop queries. So thinking about why someone is searching on desktop or how they're interacting on mobile, very different, but also a growing number of ways, or a growing number of people are actually searching in a mobile environment versus a desktop environment. And important to think, am I actually taking that into account when I craft my experiences? Sessions, obviously increasing from a mobile perspective and driving more conversions than ever before. So as we take a step back, and think about some of the 5 focal areas that exist out there, focusing on, for lack of a better word, nurturing, but really creating experiences that transcend one session, one device, and one screen that can help guide the customer across their experience with you and their buying cycle. That becomes important to build an omnichannel, aka a seamless experience that doesn't care about which aspects of your website or your teams I'm actually engaging with. And more importantly, are my vendors that I'm investing more and more money in as a marketer or a retailer, are they on the same page with me? Are they actually connected to a centralized customer data platform and strategy initiative that you dictate as opposed to the other way around? And ultimately, we hope that this fosters true cross-functional collaboration within the organization so that I can build these great experiences that transcend not just web, but really take into account the data and the experiences that resonate from mobile as it stands as a new channel. So we have time for, I think, one question here, and then any of the other questions that come in, we'll certainly follow up with you right after. One of the questions that came in was around the word MarTech. So keep seeing this word MarTech being used, never seen it defined. Really, what we're seeing here is marketing technology. As marketers are spending more and more on technologies that help drive either their understanding or driving experience or specific channels that a vendor might use, the concept of marketing technology has really come to the forefront as an area of focus. So when we think about the vendor ecosystem that's so critical to delivering on these experiences, the marketers are really in the driver's seat when it comes to making those technology investments. But it's important for them to be able to understand how do all these technologies that make up my marketing and customer experience, how do they connect to one another, and do they share my same vision, strategy, and understanding of who somebody is across the journey. So I thank you again. We'll follow up in an email with today's presentation, as well as individually to any of the additional questions that we didn't get a chance to answer today. And we thank you for your time.